I have kind of a rambling issue, a thought going through my head, and I wanted to get it on camera, get my thoughts onto the lens, so to speak, so that I can remember this issue for later. But the issue is, of course, tied in with government control, EPA, fuels, engines, conspiracies, Republicans, Democrats, right, left, liberal, progressive, conservative. Ooh, very fun. The issue I ran into, or my stepbrother and I have run into, we are planning on building a diesel motorcycle. There is one on YouTube. I'll try and put a link to this video on here to let you know what we're trying to do. There's one that says it's called V-Twin Diesel Motorcycle. An old school bobber type motorcycle with a diesel engine from a diesel generator that gets 115 miles to the gallon using diesel. And everybody knows that diesel, or everybody should know that diesel is a more efficient fuel, a more efficient engine, pretty much in every way. And you can supplement biofuels, biodiesel, veggie oil, things like that into it instead of using the petroleum-based vegetable or diesel. The issue we've run into, as I finish my rambling, the issue we've run into is that the diesel motors that this particular person used, which seems to be the most sought-after motor for this particular kind of upgrade for the motorcycle, is unavailable. They're not able to sell them in the United States because of an EPA ruling that diesel engines must conform to low sulfur emission fuel, low sulfur diesel. And this is my understanding. If I'm wrong, please correct me. And instead of, how do I want to put it this? Their marker for low sulfur diesel is a dye that they put into the fuel that auto manufacturers have to put a sensor on the engine to recognize, so that it confirms that this has been inspected as low diesel fuel or low sulfur fuel. On the surface, I agree with the premise. Obviously, I'm sure sulfur is a fucker, that we don't want sulfur, it's bad, ooh, and we shouldn't burn it, catch it on fire. Okay, I'm going to take that as at face value for now. So what the law is, or as I'm seeing it, I can't get this engine, because the EPA has deemed it unacceptable, and it can burn high sulfur diesel, which has been regulated at some point. My issue, or my thinking here, is they've contracted with the fuel petroleum companies to add a dye to their inspected low sulfur diesel, so that if you run any other fuel, any other kind of diesel that does not have their dye in the fuel, the engine simply won't run. That is an effective way to both make sure that the fuel is low sulfur, and to ensure that you have to get your fuel from the particular companies that are adding their dye to it. You have essentially, or they have, made it law that you may only buy fuel from them if you want a diesel engine. And to me, that's a monopoly and obvious bullshit involved. Now, if they had said, or there was an issue with sulfur detection in the diesel fuel, and they said, well, temporarily we're going to use this dye until we generate the technology where the engine can detect the amount of sulfur levels in the fuel, and then if it's too high, then it won't run it. that would be one thing, because then you could, when that technology is developed, you can get rid of the dye and then go with just the sulfur detection, which would make it so that any fuel that has low sulfur would work fine, which was the purpose of the law. Right? That was the purpose of the law? To make sure we're burning low sulfur diesel? I think you already know that's not why the law was put in. But I agree with the law, or supposedly, if my answer or if my information is correct that burning sulfur is more detrimental for the environment, of course we shouldn't do that or limit it as much as possible. But is the answer putting a dye in a fuel so that you can only buy that dyed fuel from that company to run the engine that you purchased in your vehicle? Is that the appropriate direction? And I'm going to say, duh, no, it's not. And I'm also doubting whether or not we have the technology, or that we don't have the technology for engines to detect sulfur levels in the fuel. I think that's false. And here's my biggest reason for it, for my annoyance with this bill, and actually several. I'll go back. I'll just start stating them because rambling off the top of my head. Vegetable oil is easily run in diesel engines. Vegetable oil has either very, very low or no sulfur content. But because of the sensor, if you pour vegetable oil into your diesel motorcycle and the sensor doesn't detect that blue dye, it won't run. Because the assumption is without that dye, it's high sulfur, which is demonstrably wrong. As I just said, you could go to the grocery store and get vegetable oil, put it in your tank. It's going to have more than likely no sulfur in it. So the application of the ruling is flawed to begin with. So that whole premise is bullshit, except for the not burning sulfur, and I'm not sure about that. My other issue, and the bigger issue that I have with my stepbrother, and we've had arguments about this, and other conservative Republican non-regulatory, get big government out of my life, but that kind of thing. My issue is that my stepbrother in particular, I'm going to use his as an example, associates the law the EPA passed through with progressive Democrat control over everything. And the two, I don't believe, have anything functionally to do with each other. You can have a corrupt government that takes bribes from fuel companies to ensure that only the fuel that those companies produce get used. That is a corruption. That's not Democrat or Republican. That's a corruption of the system, whereas private companies are buying laws. So having regulation isn't the bad thing here, in my opinion. The regulation, having a large government with lots of regulations and lots of acts to ensure that the environment is clean, that's one issue, that's one part. The problem I'm having is where private corporations influence or buy those laws and corrupt them to skew them only in their direction. So at the moment, my motorcycle conversion project is at a standstill until I can get that particular motor engine into the United States and onto my motorcycle frame. But I, again, don't see this as a regulatory issue. I see it as a corruption of a good idea to help regulate emissions for our future environment. And that is my roundabout beef for the day. I'm apparently in a manic phase, and I may be putting out more videos. So have a wonderful day. Peace.